Okay, so if we're taking a look at selling all three of those houses on GoodRich Avenue, or somebody could come in and remove them, tear them down, build new houses, or an entire complex, our two main objective questions we're going to have here are what options are there and what's the money making opportunity? So there's three different ways that we could put a price on these lots. I'm just going to refer to from here on out the three lots as one whole. Even though they're three individuals, their opportunity that there's three increases the land mass size. So the opportunity to get this sold for us, we could value it three different ways. We could value with direct comparables, which is how we standardly view and price residential real estate. We could also base a value on it off of the cap rate, which is typically what we do with commercial properties. However, with it being that Airbnb hybrid and opportunity to build and then rent them if that were approved, cap rate is relevant even though it's residential because it's more of a money making opportunity than a living experience. And then number three, the evaluation method as to what something is worth is kind of a combination of number two and one, where we develop it and then it's worth a little bit more or a lot more than the direct comparable method. So, starting with the direct comparable method, the route to value the property is to draw a 2 mile circle around the property that we're trying to value and then pull all of the sales that are comparable within the last calendar year to determine the value. So we're starting out here on West Trinity Lane, which is a little bit further, but it's a 0.2 acre lot that sold for 300K. And just for reference, ours is a 0.3 for all three of them. Here is probably our closest comp. It's almost a half acre lot for 275. This is further up the hill, so this is our closest one, I think. Now, being that this is 0.15, ours is about a little over double that. So that would put ours closer to like 250, maybe 300. Now, I know a lot of these numbers are coming out a lot lower than you were probably expecting, at least from our last conversation. So I wanted to pull some data and show what the big money in the area looks like. So this one's actually pretty decent on West Trinity Lane as well. It's almost a full acre. Now, we have about a third of an acre between all three of those homes put together. So, in theory, if the right zoning is in place, we could be a third of that price. Now, when you factor location, I think it's probably less than that as well. Now, this is another one that's in the area, and it's definitely not a direct comparable because it's not anything close. But to get up to the $8 million purchase price, it actually took a full 20 acres. So, quite a bit more than anything in the area to get that high. So that kind of covers our direct comparables method. And then we'll dive in here, number two, to the cap rate, where we value this property based off its rent. So with Airbnb opportunities being the highest rent that we can do, let's take a look at those factors. Now, keep in mind here, the Airbnb option is going to be the most difficult and is going to require not only a large amount of money to be able to make it happen, but also to be able to maintain and operate those. We're not talking something very simple, it's a very complex operation. So I pulled this data from a website called AirDNA, which is what the professional hosts that, continually open more and more Airbnbs because they have a great system for making money with Airbnb. This is where they turn to open up market insights to whether or not it's a good area to buy, whether it's a good money making opportunity. This gives them the inside scoop from Airbnb's website itself. So this is Nashville's market as a whole. And as you can see, it's in the top 1/4 percentile, which is great. Top 25%. If we go North Nashville, your properties are going to fall into the area that Airbnb calls Whites Creek. And it's even rated a little bit higher in that 85 range, which makes a lot of sense with the ones that we see across the street and onto the side of the same street as us. So our area here, as we look at these numbers, we've got 92.2K revenue on average with a 63% occupancy rate and then $400 a day. Those are some pretty good numbers. And obviously you can do a little bit better if you can find ways to get the occupancy rate up. But on average, at 92K in revenue, definitely not 92K profit per year. You've got all of the expenses, mortgages, taxes, cleaning, turnover, things like that that are going to factor. So when it comes to how much of that revenue is profit, it's probably closer to about a third of that. And then in some cases, it's even quite a bit less depending on the operation that you run. Because even some of the best operations are only going to net about a third of that. So you could realistically even go down to about a fourth of that. If we're making 92K in revenue each year, it's probably a $15,000 to $16,000 profit per year. This is just another statistic that I pulled from Google that says, average Airbnb owner is a little under 500 per month, and as high as 2,000 are some of the best ones. But a lot of that does have to factor in mortgage payments and taxes. Like if it's paid off, obviously you can turn a higher profit. But covering a mortgage, it generally is the number one thing that will eat into an Airbnb owner's profit. So we talked about option one, where we could sell it for in between, 250,000 all the way up to 450,000. The comps are kind of all over the place, but somewhere in that range. And then cap rate would be for the Airbnb monthly rent, monthly compound over annually about $15,000 to $16,000 a year. And then thirdly, let's go ahead and talk about if we can take these lots, get them developed and approved for zoning to be able to sell them for homes like that, what that process looks like. So we should take a look at the ones that are on the same street as us on GoodRich Avenue. If each one of these is a 4-bed, 4-bath, 2,100 square feet, and approximately $900,000 purchase price on average. That's going to be relevant because this type and size of home, even though we're going vertically instead of horizontally, square footage is going to make a huge difference in the bottom line of the developer on this project. Because if we don't have the pricing justification, the overall project's not going to be as profitable. So to narrow in on the exact price and return, this is very important to pay attention to. But if we assume that we can replicate something similar to this, let's take a look at the lot and the prices on that lot and the development strategies. So if we take a look at the lot size on this, they were able to squeeze 15 of those $1 million homes into a full acre. With that in mind, and we compare that to ours, we have about a third of an acre. And so I think with the correct planning and approval, engineering drawings would have to back this up and show that this is possible. But I think the way that our lots are all three connected and together, we'd be able to do something similar with this and get about 9 units in total. Even accounting for areas for parking and fire hydrants and, utilities and things like that that are needed, we could probably still fit 9. So if we take a look at the tax record here, it's very interesting because you can see it starts out in 2017 as a $90,000 sale, and then it moves into 2018 at a $350,000 sale. But then it almost triples in value at around $1 million and some change. What is it, $1.5 million-ish? Where the project continues to go up in value. And you might be asking, why did it sell so many times back to back to back in that short of a time span? It seems like every year this is selling. I'm going to use a clip from social media from a local real estate developer here in Goodlettsville. He kind of explains how that process works, and we can see that reflected here on the same units on our street as to how that played out and what the strategy at play is.
So we build this, we bring it to the city, we get the city's approval on the drawings. Once the city was approved with the drawings and okay with the drawings, they gave me full approval, but then I sent it to the fire marshal. Fire marshal was the last person to sign off on it, and when the fire marshal signs off on it, it is shovel ready. That means you can start construction immediately. So that is where this project is, and that's how you add value to it. Just doing the deal and putting the deal together for somebody else to build it, because most land developers do not do their own building. Most land developers will sell it to a developer that does the building, and they develop the building. So there's a different niche for different people. Everybody doesn't stay in their own lane. Sometimes everybody stays in their own lane. Sometimes people don't stay in their own lane. But most of the contractors, will not come in and buy the land and do all the land development. They would rather come in and buy this project. You got somebody from New York that wants to come down here and build something, build an apartment complex. They don't have the time to send lawyers down here and deal with that the whole time. They would rather somebody else come in here, get it all ready, and then they just send a crew over here and hire somebody to build it. Ryan Homes, they're a big home builder in the area. Ryan Homes will come in. They want to buy the land with some of the entitlements on it for probably about 6%. So they're not looking to give you 8, 10, 12%. They're buying that land at a great cost, and they're going to go in and do the rest of the entitlement.
So coming back to this data sheet here, we've got the evidence of the strategy that he just talked about, where there's multiple LLCs. You know, we're selling from one LLC, B&G LLC, to Pate Holdings LLC. So these are different companies that are operating as real estate investment groups and taking this project through the different stages of development. You know, first you bring in the engineers and they draw up the plans as to what this is going to look like, and then you take those plans with the engineering in mind over to the city to see if you can get it approved. Once the city approves it for, you know, let's say $1 million homes, or then one level above that would be $1 million homes and also able to be rented out on Airbnb, they're able to sell this project to a builder for a higher amount. So if we take the overall price of the property, being that we could probably sell each one of the units for around $1 million, that's about a $9 million cap with 9 units. We would then have to take about 6% for the value of the land that those units are going to be built on. That 6% is then what our current lots are worth. To improve that, take it up to around 8 to 10%, we would have to draw up those engineering plans, take it to the city to get it approved. Now, depending on that type of approval is going to drastically affect the value, of course. But if it pans out the same way that this one did, and it goes from, approval for build, and then it goes from approval to build to an entire community, and then taking that entire community and also for it to be able to be zoned as Airbnb non-owner operator, that's how we got from 2017 90 grand all the way up to 1.5 million, and then why it changed hands so many times, because each one of those companies specializes in engineering, planning, and then zoning and getting that type of approval in place. It takes a certain type of a professional who knows what they're doing to get those goals accomplished and further improve the value of that property. That's what our fellow with that video clip was talking about. He has that set of skills and availability, and also, hundreds of thousands of dollars if needed to invest it in something like this to be able to get it approved and move that type of project into place. So if we know that our land is roughly in its current state worth 6%, we could get it up to 10-ish, maybe a little bit higher than that. That gives us our total value without getting a entire builder and a builder's financing involved. That could technically be an option number 4, but that's not something that builders are typically looking to partner with people for. They're wanting to purchase the land directly, and like he said in that clip, they'd rather do it at the 6% or maybe even 8% at max, because they want to absorb the majority of the profit, or as much of it as they can. Now, it's very possible that we find either a project developer or a builder or a real estate investor that wants to partner with us and get involved with something like that. But I think the best opportunity for us to find somebody like that is listing it and putting it on market. And then once they see that those properties, or all 3 of them together, we'll just call it one property, once they know that it's available, they would read the description, the notes that I've got, and we could advertise in that listing description as, hey, we're looking for a potential builder or investor to be able to come along and help us take this property to its fullest potential. And I think both parties would be able to make more money if something like that were to happen. So an overview here is our three methods once again to value it as a direct comparable. The pros to that is there's no effort to sell it. We just list it, somebody makes us an offer, we close it, and then we have the cash and the deal's done. Number two, the cap rate, which involves getting a giant loan to build or develop those Airbnbs, or maybe not a giant loan, but maybe the project is developed and then you want as part of the deal one of those Airbnbs. You'd still need some loan involved because there wouldn't be enough to cover quite a full one of those paid off. But that's a potential. It would take many years to put all that in place, but it's definitely a good possibility. And then option three, to go through the development and the stages of getting it, zoned slash rezoned. So option number three, to develop it, to get it rezoned, you know, assuming that it will get rezoned smoothly and that there's no issues there, which is a large assumption. It would really heavily depend on us finding the right developer or the right investor partner that has this set of skills and expertise and experience to be able to come alongside in our project and get it to those next stages where it increases that value and it's further approved so a builder could just come in and hit the ground running. It is very possible that we find a builder that's willing to, at the end of it rather than having somebody in the middle. But typically that builder's going to want to just absorb both of those portions of the deal and not give that back to us, if that makes sense. So that's kind of the three methods and kind of an overview, the pros and cons to that. If we go over the three options and which is going to be probably, all things considered, time, money, relative ease, the fastest route, I think, to the most amount of profit is probably number one is the direct comparables. Once the deal's done, it's done. It's not going to take, per se years. And so if we want to take a look at what all of these numbers are, number one, I think the direct comparable method would net us somewhere around 350,000 for all three lots. It's possible we get up to 425. We could start high and then go low if we need to, but even 425 is a stretch. I don't think that it's worth 425. It would just be, we'd have to try and see if we could get that. And then if it doesn't move after some amount of time, we'd bring the price down. I think we could do around 350 on the low side. Just because that development opportunity is there. And if it sits on market long enough, I think that's our price floor. As I was running all these numbers and putting this option together, I saw the opportunity that made a little bit more sense to me. What I would probably recommend is to maximize that number two cap rate potential for profit around maybe $20,000 a year, rather than take several years to get into the Airbnb development project where you're still going to have about a $500,000 loan on that, or maybe 400,000. Would be to skip that part. If we sold the lots for the 350 to 400 that we could potentially get, and then rather than pay that capital gains tax like you and I talked about, we take it and use that, directly roll it into a rental. So if we were able to find a single family home, like this one, for example, I just pulled a random one, and take this, it'd be paid off so there's no mortgage expense, and then we'd be able to turn around, rent it out. My suggestion would be to hand that over to a property management company for a very low fee. They would make sure that it's rented and taken care of, and then all you have to do is sit back and collect the paycheck. So if it's covered every month and it rents for, let's say, $2,000, you could probably bring back somewhere between $1,600 and $1,800 profit each month. If you do that times 12, that's going to be just as good, maybe even a little bit better than what an Airbnb would do, because there's less variable cost. And things that can't be determined on a typical 12-month lease. It's a lot more boring, and if it's taken care of for you, that's even better. Depending on how well we did with those lots, we might be able to do something like this where we actually rolled it into two different properties. So like there's a couple of townhomes that I pulled as well as an example. If one of them's around the like 260, another one's around the 280 range, you might have to have a little bit of a loan for one of those, or you just pick a different property that the numbers work. You could go a little bit lower, but these ones are nicer, newer in construction, very low maintenance, and I like to find properties like that because the less you have to pay for in maintenance, the higher the profit. So, easier time managing that property. You might be able to stretch that, $1,500, $1,800 a month profit into about, 2,500 when we have 2 units that we're able to rent instead of just one. So once again, that's the 3 different options that we could potentially go about making money on this property. I definitely would recommend the direct comparable and just standard retail listing on the 3 lots. I think it would skip a whole lot of headache and hassle and then get you to a better profit than owning an Airbnb quicker, in my opinion. Let me know what you think about all this or any questions that you have once you've watched the video. Feel free to get back in touch and we'll discuss all these different thoughts.